Idi Amin. Known as Big Daddy by his supporters and the Butcher by his critics, Idi Amin went from being a dirt-poor boy from a town in northwest Uganda, so remote nobody knows its name, to becoming the third president of Uganda and a speaker on the global political stage. He was infamous for his ruthless stomping down of perceived traitors, expulsion of non-Africans, his widespread terror, and his taking joy in humiliation. Idi Amin's exact birth date is uncertain, with historians estimating anywhere between 1925 and 1928 as the true date. When Amin was born, his parents split, and it's believed he was largely raised by his mother, although he still saw his father infrequently. He grew up in the West Nile province among the Kakwa people, a small Islamic tribe who had settled in the region just a few decades prior. As a child and into his teen years, it's reported that he received little education due to limited opportunities for West Nile Ugandans, and by 21 he had few options on what to do next. Rather than attempt to cobble together more of an education, he joined the former British regiment, the King's African Rifles, and began the training that would come to define his future rule. Allegedly beginning his career as an assistant cook, he quickly rose through the ranks, taking promotion after promotion on his rise to the top. He was deployed to Somalia in 1949, helped put down the Shifta rebels, and was deployed again to snuff out the Mau Mau rebellion in Kenya. Along with being a skilled soldier, he was also quickly gaining a reputation for his cruelty. Amin showed so much unnecessary brutality during interrogations that it almost derailed his military career, but instead he was promoted to Effendi in 1959, the highest possible rank for a black African soldier in the British military. In addition to his military prowess at the KAR, Amin was also a skilled boxer, becoming a renowned Ugandan amateur boxing champion. His physical prowess and affinity for conflict spanned across his professional and personal life. Uganda was pushing towards independence as the 1950s came to a close, and Amin made a key alliance with Apollo Milton Obote, the leader of the Uganda People's Conference. Obote would go on to become the Prime Minister of Uganda when it reached independence in 1962. Amin was made a lieutenant in Obote's Ugandan army. His first order for Amin was to stop the cattle stealing in the north. Amin did this, but he also committed such atrocities that the British demanded he be tried for his crimes. Instead, Obote had him trained further in military tactics in the United Kingdom. When Amin got back to Uganda in 1964, the army was in full-scale mutiny, without anyone to hold control in his absence. Amin was tasked with getting it back in order. When he succeeded, he was promoted again, this time to deputy commander. He was then accused of smuggling gold, coffee, and ivory out of the Congo alongside Prime Minister Obote. Meanwhile, in 1966, Obote dismissed the government, declaring himself president. The allure of power drove Amin's ambitions higher and higher. He continued to hoard funds from smuggling and illicit arms dealing with Sudanese rebels, all the while fortifying his position in the Ugandan military. Obote promoted Amin to Chief of the Army and Air Force, a position that's forfeited even more power to Amin. After an unsuccessful assassination attempt on Obote's life in 1969, the president became more wary and tried to seize greater control of the military in 1970. All the while, Amin continued to build his network, working closely with Israeli and British agents in Uganda. Mistrusting of Amin, Obote attempted to demote him, but this too failed. While Obote was traveling to Singapore, Amin took advantage. In 1971, he staged a successful coup on the Ugandan government. While he called himself president, the title he preferred was, quote, His Excellency President for Life Field Marshal Al-Haji Dr. Idi Amin, VC DSO MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, and conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general and Uganda in particular, end quote. Amin immediately got started with his atrocities. In his first few months, he brutally assassinated political threats and members of the Ugandan police before turning his attention on the public. Quickly, he disposed of the Chief of Justice, the Anglican Archbishop and the Vice-Chancellor of Makerere University, among other high-ranking officials. Within just 3 months, he also enlisted 10,000 new soldiers, almost half of which were ex-Anyanya guerrilla fighters, former Zairean freedom fighters, and those from Amin's home. In the first 6 months of his reign, Ugandans killed Ugandans with increasing alacrity, urged by Amin himself. From there, he then launched one of his first major attacks on humanity since taking over, the killing of approximately 3,000 Langi and Acholi soldiers, given their connection to the now exiled former Prime Minister Obote. He also created killer squads within what was called the State Research Bureau and Public Safety Unit to hunt down Obote's supporters and task them with snuffing out any opposition to his reign. Obote, from his exile in Tanzania, attempted to rally his followers to retake Uganda, but was unsuccessful. Tens of thousands of Asian residents were expelled from his country in 1972, which thoroughly wrecked the Ugandan economy to a point that its impact is still felt today. He publicly insulted the leaders of the free world, including the United States and Great Britain, and reversed Uganda's relations with Israel, instead buddying up with Colonel Muammar Mohammed al-Gaddafi of Libya, as well as the Soviet Union and the Palestinians. Despite this and public hostility from leaders in the US, UK, and Israel, they still hypocritically worked with the dictator. In 1973, America actually took over Britain as Uganda's most prominent trading partner, despite publicly closing their embassy in Kampala that same year. Amin continued to act brutally and with abandon. In 1976, a group of Palestinians and members of the Badr Meinhof gang hijacked a French airliner at Entebbe Airport. With both Amin and the Ugandan army's support, the flight en route from Israel to France was held hostage by the two groups. However, Israeli forces launched an immediate counter-raid and freed the hostages. This sent Amin into a tirade. He executed several airport employees, a host of Kenyans that he blamed for the counter-raid, and an elderly British passenger who had been sent to a hospital after the attempted hijacking. By this point, Amin received his nickname, the Butcher of Uganda, and he lived up to that moniker. He had killed over 300,000 civilians, including some high-ranking Uganda citizens such as the Anglican Archbishop, the Governor of the Bank of Uganda, and the Chancellor of Makerere College. Yet he grew more paranoid over time, and it was clear that his grip was slipping. When a collection of Ugandans fled over the border to Tanzania, he flew into a rage and accused Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere of attempting to foment insurrection in Uganda. In typical Amin fashion, he immediately turned to military action in an attempt to enact his revenge. He sent a mixture of Ugandan military and Libyan support into Tanzania, aiming to punish Nyerere as well as those that had deserted. His goal was to take Kagera Salient, a small territory north of the Kagera River. While he initially took the strip of land, it didn't last long. Just 2 weeks later, Nyerere launched a counterattack with the help of Ugandan rebels. The momentum quickly went against Amin as the rebels and Tanzanians took Kampala. Amin's military was driven back to the capital, and when it became clear he wasn't going to win, Amin fled the country, leaving the Ugandan rebels to put Yusufu Lule into the role of president, effectively ending Amin's bloody reign of terror. Amin's retreat took him to Libya, where he stayed for a decade under the care of al-Gaddafi before he moved on to Saudi Arabia. There, he lived out the rest of his days until he died in 2003, never held accountable for the crimes he committed.